This week in Cincinnati, SORTA's road ahead. It's at the heart of many of the region's biggest transportation issues, the streetcar, expanding metro, and calls for a sales tax increase. 9 on Your Side goes to the man in charge to get answers for you. Next on This Week in Cincinnati.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.
Good morning, everyone. SORTA is at the hub of many of this region's mass transit systems. It runs the bus system in this part of Ohio. That's called Metro, of course, and it plays an important role with the streetcar. Thousands of people depend on SORTA every single day to get around town. Maybe it's to work, to school, for shopping as well. And SORTA is facing 3 major issues right now. The streetcar. It's still experiencing growing pains after launching last fall. Updating and expanding the Metro bus system, that's an issue as well. And its proposal for a sales tax increase to help Metro. So joining us to talk about all of that is the area's transportation needs, I should say, is SORTA's Chief Executive Officer, Dwight Ferrell. And also with us is WCPO transportation reporter, Pat LaFleur. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And there is so much to talk about, so let's start with the streetcar, and I want to be very clear about something. The relationship regarding the streetcar. The city owns and funds the Cincinnati Bell Connector, that's the streetcar, but the system is managed by SORTA. That's a contract that you all have with the city, so let's be clear about that right away. What kind of grade would you give the streetcar at this point and its operations?
I would defer that question to the city and to the citizens to grade it. We are working collaboratively with the city and the contractor to make it the best that we can be. And quite frankly, it's a new system with growing pains, as you mentioned, and we're working every day to improve.
Do you find that the growing pains are similar that other cities have had? When they institute a new thing like this, like a streetcar,
yes.
Are we on par that way?
Yes, actually, in some regards, we're better. But yes, it's just like, in a matter of speaking, it's like giving birth to something. And so when you give birth to it, you have all these ideas about what it's like to deal with, your new baby, and then the baby shows up with his or her own personalities and quirks and what have you, and you have to adjust to that. And that's kind of what's going on here.
What have you been seeing as far as ridership trends?
Well, I think that it's been heavily reported on that. The city is probably the best organization to talk about that, but it's been up and down. But we're working with the city to do everything we can to increase ridership. And so certainly, as the weather gets better, we would expect that it'll change some.
I imagine I'm much like other connector riders in that when I go to ride it, it's a weekend, it's a sunny day. I'm going from a Reds game up to have dinner in OTR or back or something along those lines. And so it's always packed. So we're finding that it's being used really for people who are more visiting the city. Do you find that?
Well, I don't have any information about the demographics of the rider, whether it's somebody who is used and for what purpose that they're using. I know that, like in the case of Metro, 50% of our trips are work-related, and 1 in 20 riders or commuters commute by Metro. But as far as the streetcar is concerned, we don't have that. I don't have that kind of information about the demographic breakdown. And secondarily, people use the streetcar or Metro for a whole host of reasons. People who have decided they don't want a car, so whether it's going to church or going to work or going grocery shopping or what have you. So they use it for all of those things.
So if I understand correctly, you're kind of a liaison between the city and Transdev, the firm that was hired to actually operate the streetcar.
That's
so you're
correct.
kind of a conduit point.
We're like the city's agent.
Sure.
So we're tasked with it, and we contract with Transdev to provide the actual operation. So it's Transdev's employees, their streetcar operators, maintainers, and what have you, who do that.
So what are you hearing from Transdev then about kind of some of the mechanical issues we've heard about with the streetcar vehicles? How are they dealing with that?
Well, we're working with the city. The city is the point on the relationship between the streetcar manufacturer, CAF, and so we refer all of those issues about the actual performance of the streetcar to the city for the city to address.
So then let me ask you about kind of the service delays that we've been seeing throughout the city as well. We heard last week that the average headway, that would be the time between a departure and an arrival of the next car, correct? We're seeing that we're about a minute or two behind what was the original goal. What can we do to keep reducing that?
Well, again, as I talked a minute ago, the city is still getting used to this new venture, and drivers have got to get used to it. And so a lot of the things that happen are things that happen because a driver isn't doing something or doesn't park right or what have you. So we're seeing improvements in that area. So again, the streetcar has actually not been in operation a year yet.
No.
Right.
So it's just like any kind of, just again, going back to the baby analogy, the streetcar is 7 months. And so it's evolving. And so it will get better as people get used to it. And it's just going to take time to get there.
Real quickly, I'm sorry to interject. No. So do you sort of feel like it's not just the riders who need to get used to it, the city that doesn't need to get used to it, but it's also the drivers in the city, the folks who are perhaps sitting on the tracks to go drop off a package or pick someone up, whatever that is, that we as citizens of this community need more awareness?
Well, actually, yes. So, I mean, you think about the fact, I'm going to go back again to the baby analogy. You used to be able to play your music really loud.
Before the baby.
Before the baby. Well, now you can't. There were things that you had to adjust to over the first few months or even first few years as you got used to the fact that now you're a parent and how you have to deal with that. And so there are people who drive downtown every day who still have to get used to the fact that you've got this streetcar that's there and how they have to modify what they do to accommodate it. It's the same as if you were to go downtown and take a street that was a one-way and turn it into a two-way. It'd be the same kind of adjustment. So people have to get used to it.
So could we have somehow gotten the city more ready before the streetcar launched? Or I guess what I'm trying to get at is we knew that the streetcar was going to be a part of the normal traffic configuration. Was there something that we missed, or is this just a normal course of action?
It's just a normal course of action. It's just a normal course of action. I hate to keep going back to it, but how do you get used to being a parent for the first time? You don't until you experience it. People can tell you about it all day long, but until you actually experience it and deal with all of that, then you know. And again, if you look at other organizations that have, or other cities that have had in-street running, whether that's been a light rail system or a streetcar system, they've all had some level of issue over the first year or two with people trying to get used to it, no matter what the signage was or what have you. So what we're experiencing is not uncommon, and there isn't anything that somebody could have done and said, okay, now we're going to be able to educate all of the drivers to do something. It's not until they see it and experience it that they deal with it.
We have so much more to talk to you about, and our conversation with Dwight Ferrell will continue in just a moment. We're going to talk about busing and the proposed levy. We'll be right back.
The people, the headlines, the issues impacting you, all on This Week in Cincinnati on 9 on Your Side.